Okay, so before we dive into the talk today, we can spend a little time centering ourselves, coming to this place, and setting our motivation for this time together. So I just invite you all to sit comfortably and take 2 or 3 nice deep breaths. And on your out breath, releasing any tension that you're holding anywhere in your bodies. So scanning through your body, your jaw, neck and shoulders, chest, abdomen, calf muscles, anywhere in your body that you're holding tension, just release it on the out breath a few times. Then allowing your breathing to settle at its natural rhythm, just paying attention to the rise and fall of your body and the sensations of your breathing. And becoming aware of your heartbeat. Just noticing the pulse pulsating in your body from the rhythm of your heartbeat. Recognizing that these 2 mechanisms of the body, just taking care of everything so that we're still here, we're still alive while we're breathing and while our hearts are beating. So feeling a sense of appreciation, gratitude for your body and for this life that you have. And recognizing that, connecting with this underlying basic wish that we have day in, day out, to be all right, to be happy, and to be free of any problems. Recognizing how this plays out in your own life from the moment we wake up. We have our first cup of tea or coffee in the morning or whatever we like to have, and we make it just the way we like it. And then so on through the day, all the things that we do, just trying to get that balance of things to be all right and have no problems. Just connecting with that basic reality, that basic wish that drives us each day. So we each have this wish to be happy, to be all right. We have no problems. We have this wish and we have the right. And recognizing that our experience of happiness and our experience of pain, we have internally, right? We experience it in our minds. We're recognizing that while we meet with all sorts of situations and circumstances, outer conditions, actually, if we experience happiness and suffering on an internal level, then the cause must also be internal. So the external things contribute, they're conditions for our happiness and our problems, but the main cause is within us. So we take some time now to investigate a little bit about our minds, a little bit how our minds work, and how we can work with our minds to have a different perspective or to widen our perspective, to help bring about more spacious mind, a more peaceful mind, a mind more resilient to cope with problems, and a happier mind, a more light-hearted, open, happier heart. And if we take our time to listen openly and to share openly, looking at these things, then we can think that there'll be some positive merit and positivity that we gather together through our time together today. So we can think that we're doing this in order to contribute to our own inner well-being, our own inner peace. And thereby that's going to ripple out into the way we relate with others, the way we communicate with others. And it's going to ripple out into our families, our communities, and wider. So we can think that our time together today is also our small contribution to world peace, for the well-being of all humanity, and ultimately for the well-being of all sentient beings. So if we can mix your motivation a little with that feeling in your own words, just a few moments. And those who take refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, if you consider yourself Buddhist, you can also mix some motivation with going for refuge and developing bodhicitta. So those who wish to can recite with me. Those who want to just hold the previous motivation and keep that in your hearts while you recite. Mange charan soge chanam la chanja padu dadni kyapsuchi tage jin soge be sognam ki drala penche sange drupai sho sange charan soge chanam la chanja padu dadni kyapsuchi tage jin soge be sognam ki drala penche sange drupai sho Sangye chadam soge chanam la changcha badu dani kyapsu chi dage jin soge pe sognam ki drala penche sangye drupasham. I'm reflecting, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that knows no suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of attachment and hatred for those who are close and distant. Okay. So we can have a little discussion now. We called this session together Check Up, dissolving your problems with wisdom. So Check Up is something that Lama Yeshe, so Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the founders of Tushita and the whole FBMT organization, Lama Yeshe would often say check up, checking up about what's going on in our minds, checking up about any situation and the reality of the situation. And very particularly, excuse me, Lama Yeshe said about if we check up, we can dissolve our problems and dissolve our afflictions with wisdom. So I wanted to go a little bit into that today. Because usually we are quite reactive in life situations. When things are going really well, we get all caught up with that and emotionally engaged with that when things are going really well. And likewise, when there's difficult situations, we get all caught up and reactive emotionally. We get our buttons pushed in difficult situations, right? And usually we take everything at face value and react to the situation thinking that the outer thing is the problem. And it's like such an immediate reaction that we don't have much space in our mind to do the checking up, to see if there's another way we can look at things, or see if there's a broader way, a more holistic way of looking at a situation. When things are going well, we can probably keep our cool a bit better, but usually with things that push our buttons, that aggravate us, frustrate us, or make us angry, usually there's not much space in our minds that we just get caught up and react right to the situations. So we do it across the board with our emotions, but mainly it's more obvious with the things that trigger us, that make us frustrated or impatient or angry. So to look at examples like that, it'd be easier for us to see, and then we can apply it across the board with other things. So, like for example, when we have a situation that pushes our buttons where we emotionally react with anger, or we like have aversion and want to get away from the situation, want to push away the person, when this attitude that can't bear the situation, that has aversion or gets angry, actually, when anger is in the driving seat of our mind, it only paints a negative picture of the person that we get frustrated or angry at. And so, like for an example, if someone punches you or something, like a silly example, then we would just be annoyed at that person, and we would just see something wholly negative about the person. Our mind wouldn't be able to see the totality of the person, that they have good aspects as well, that they're loved by some people and that they're kind to other people, and that there's been times in the past where they've been also kind or helpful to us or haven't harmed us in the past. That when our mind gets angry, we lose sight of that bigger picture. Can you all relate to that? Is there someone that you normally love and then sometimes you fly off the handle with when they push your buttons? Does that so far make sense that we have that? So while I have not much a clue about science, and I haven't done my own checking up about the scientific studies, but His Holiness the Dalai Lama is very often quoting or mentioning about this one scientist who, through his research, showed that our afflictive emotions like anger and attachment and so on, what they perceive is around 90% of their own projection. So that's quite a lot, isn't it? 90%. So what that's saying is, does anyone, we're all from different countries here. In England, we have a saying you might have heard of about having rose-tinted glasses on when things, when you get attached to someone, or when you have strong desire to someone, or we say you've got your rose-tinted glasses on. Basically, your head is in the clouds and you can only see beautiful. So it's those rose-tinted glasses over-exaggerate how beautiful something is, right? So that's through the eyes of our attachment, or our clinging onto something what makes us feel good, or someone that we think makes us happy. With the mind of attachment, we have these rose-tinted glasses that paint this totally beautiful picture, and they don't see the totality of that person, we need to bring our feet back on the ground by reasoning with our mind when it gets attached, to say, hang on a minute, lift up your glasses, have a look, and see a bit more, not necessarily try and see them as all bad, that's too far the other way, but like to just bring some thinking about some reasons that are in line with reality, that give the more totality of the person or the situation, to bring our feet back on the ground, to loosen up our attachment. And so one of the remedies, so we've jumped from anger all the way to attachment, but we'll swing back, don't worry. So like when one of the remedies, or one of the ways of thinking to help to try and bring our attachment down, or strong clinging to someone, projecting all of our happiness into them or the situation or the new car or the new phone or whatever it is to think about the impermanent nature, the transient nature of the thing that we get attached to, or the person we're attached to. So in general, the impermanence is neither positive nor negative. It's just the reality of things, right? This momentary changing, that all things will pass. On a coarse level, we see trees fall down and buildings fall down, and phones and cars get old and need replacing, and as people we age, and eventually we'll have to either separate through death or through other situations that we end up, this separation happens. So the coming together is a temporary thing that will have see its own course, have an end, right? And the object that we're so attached to, if we can think about its temporary nature, not only that eventually on a coarse level it will disintegrate and be gone, but also it has this momentary change that leads up to that final disintegration. Like, we don't get old overnight, do we? Like, sometimes you look in the mirror every day, and then suddenly, after quite a few years, we suddenly see ourselves differently, and like, oh, either there's some grey hairs there, or wrinkles, or even if we're looking at our parents or another family member, we suddenly see some real strong signs of aging. But that didn't come about overnight, did it? There was a gradual process of momentary change that led up to this more obvious level of change, right? Can you all recognize that, either in yourselves or when you've looked at other people that you take for granted how they are every day, and then one day you actually see how they are and see, oh, they look, if you go away for a while and then go back, we see someone in our family looks a lot older. Like, I have young nephews and suddenly they're taller than me. They weren't a couple of years ago when I was home. So they didn't get that high overnight. It was a gradual thing. So you can all see that transient, impermanent, temporary nature of things is a reality of those things, right? So if we can think of that, so this is just using this checking up and using wisdom to dissolve our problems. If our strong attachment or strong clinging to someone or something, our strong, like, holding on to them, buying into the thought that they bring us happiness, or those things make us feel good or bring us happiness, if we recognize that in ourselves, we can bring that down, or we can create a bit of space there by recognizing the temporary nature of the thing that we're attached to, or the temporary nature of a relationship, or the temporary nature of the person and of this life. So can you see how thinking and using the reasoning of how things are temporary or impermanent, that can help bring our attachments' feet back on the ground, can level it out a bit. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's one aspect of it. And then you can also think about how the person that we're attached to, or the objects that we're attached to, or that we have, buy into bringing our happiness. Attachment might not be a word so familiar to you. Just basically, we pin our hopes and our happiness on others and other things, don't we? If I have that, I'll feel all right, or that person makes me feel good. So we think that they make us feel happy, right? So it's just like questioning that, and then looking into the thing or person that we are attached to, or buy into them bringing us happiness, and seeing if it's realistic or not. So the temporary nature of things, or the person or the object, is one type of reasoning we can think out of, one realistic thing to bring our feet back on the ground, or to bring ourselves, like bring our feet back on the ground when it's in terms of attachment, or just to bring ourselves more centered, to have a more holistic look, a more seeing the more totality of the person or situation. If we feel ourselves getting, pinning all our hopes or expectations on someone or something, or the other way, feeling aversion to someone or something, or getting angry towards them. So that reasoning works across the board with any kind of agitation in the mind. So I already jumped in with a little explanation and an example, but probably should step back a little bit and just recognizing. So as human beings, we are emotional beings, aren't we? But not all of our emotions are harmful, destructive, neurotic. Some of our emotions are very constructive. They really enhance our well-being. They really promote harmony and good relationships with people, like compassion and pure love. And so if we can bring these positive emotions, there are so many more, just touching on a couple, more to the forefront of our minds, and more, if they're more at the forefront when we engage in our relationships with people and with things, then that's going to enhance our well-being. So it's not like we want to not have emotions, it's just we want to look and see which of our emotions are more neurotic, not in line with reality, agitating our minds, and which of our emotions and ways of thinking, if we have understanding or misunderstanding. Of course, understanding is going to be more helpful for our harmony in our relationships and more balanced mind. So at the outset, as human beings, just recognizing that we are emotional beings, we have emotions, some of them are constructive and some of them cause us problems. So from the Buddha's presentation, an affliction or a destructive emotion, or the emotions that are not so helpful for us, they are all in general like defined as that which when it arises in our mind, it disturbs our peace of mind. That which when it arises in our mind, it disturbs our peace of mind. So if we're not sure what's going on in our minds and which states of mind are healthy and constructive and good for our well-being, and which ones are destructive and unhealthy and not good for our well-being, first of all, we need to be able to create a bit of space to start to see what's going on in our mind, right? So this is the first bit of the checkup, the checking up. Before we jump to any reasoning to start to try and steer our mind in a more constructive direction, we want to be able to create some space there to be able to catch it, to recognize when we're getting worked up, when we're getting emotional in a way of like feeling too attached, pinning all our hopes and expectations on someone or something, or if we're getting jealous, or if pride is creeping in, or if we're getting angry or unable to tolerate someone or a situation. First, we have to be able to notice that that's happening before we can start to shift it and try and turn it around, right? So when we look at the way we normally are when we are reactive in a situation, it's like, there's no space in the mind to see what's going on. We've just acted our thoughts out, our emotions out before we've had a chance. And usually afterwards we slap our head and go, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I got all caught up, and we apologize to our loved ones. I didn't mean to, get caught up like that. I didn't mean to say those things. I was angry, because we know it's not normally how we are. But in the moment, we just got carried away. So we need to have this, to create a little bit of space in the mind so that we can recognize. That's the starting point, yeah? To be able to create a bit of breathing space. So does that make sense? Like if we create a little bit of space, then we can see what's going on. And if everything's going fine, we can keep going. If there's something that is, if we recognize that our mind is getting agitated, then we can recognize, oh, there must be a destructive emotion in my mind, a harmful, not in an emotional in the way that's not constructive, it's not helpful, that's it's disturbing our mind, so therefore it's an affliction or a disturbing emotion. So if we can just recognize that sensation that has agitated our mind, then we can say, we can look into it more and start to identify what kind of emotion it is, and then what reasoning we can bring to try and turn it around. So basically, the point is, we get caught up in certain emotions that are not helpful for us, not constructive for us. So the very first step in our checking up is just checking up at the very, where's our mind at the moment? Just checking up, like, what state of mind, what's going on in my mind right now. So that first step requires some control, some ability to be able to just be present, right? So there's this big mindfulness movement in the West now, isn't there? Basically, this creating space in our mind through just observing either your breathing or the mind itself, whichever is helpful. If we're able to spend a few minutes every day training in that, sitting quietly in our room somewhere, just taking a few minutes every day to start getting used to watching what's going on in our minds, observing our breathing or observing our state of mind, then that training, we can then bring that with us as we go about our days. If we haven't got much of a practice or a familiarity of being able to recognize what's going on in our mind, it'd be really hard to do that in the moment when our buttons are pushed, right? So if we see some value in that, if we recognize that we don't want to be caught up in our disturbing emotions anymore, we don't want to be reactive to situations that normally push our buttons anymore, if we want to improve our relationships and improve our own peace of mind, our well-being, then we can, if we feel like that, then we can recognize there'll be some value in taking a little time to get to know our minds and creating a little bit of space in our minds. So the first checking up is just creating some space to be present and observe what's going on in our mind. And it's hard to do that in the moment when our buttons are pushed. It's easier to do that if we can take a little time out each day, just a few minutes, to just reconnect with ourselves, to just be present. When we observe our breathing as a object for our mindfulness meditation, it's actually like a preliminary. My teacher would explain it being like taking a painkiller when you have a headache. It's like a temporary measure to just pacify at the moment. But then we don't just leave it at that. There's so much more that can be done on top of that to really bring about a transformation of our minds. So when we take some time to just observe our breathing, we actually start to notice when our mind wanders off to our thoughts or to feelings or distracted by sounds and things like that. Probably all of you have some experience of a little bit of doing this exercise, some breathing meditation or being present. So probably you all know what I'm talking about. You start to notice, not only notice when your mind wanders, we notice how often, how much our mind goes off, distracted to different sounds, or we feel an itch or a pain in the body, or we start thinking about something, and before we know it, 5 minutes is gone and we've been on this train of thought. So in doing that, we start to recognize how often we're not present and we're not centered. Yeah. Just by doing that brief observation, by doing a few minutes of mindful breathing or mindfully observing the nature of if you take the breath as an object, you notice when you wander from the breath. If you take even subtler the nature of mind as your object, you start to observe when thoughts come up and when and then watch them as they abide and then watch them as they disappear. And so you start to see how these thoughts have no essence, how they come and stay a while and disappear. For me, that has been like the biggest, like right early on in my getting connected with Buddhism and in my ordination. Just that very straightforward meditation of observing the thoughts, observing your mind and watching the thoughts as they come, stay a while and disappear. that was already like a huge breakthrough, because I don't know about you, but for me, I felt like there was so we all have some problems we've had in our lives that we try and deal with, and it feel like it was something that would come up every now and again, like a feeling of sadness, for example. But for me, it was this sadness and some grief that felt like a big chunk of sadness that I had to work through slowly. I don't know if any of you can relate with that. So things that have already happened in our lives that we still carry around with us that affect us sometimes, when it would come up, I'd feel like, oh, that's how I really feel. And it would feel like there was this lump of sadness I had to work through. So doing this basic meditation, when I was introduced to a Mahayana Vipassana retreat, just basically you're spending time observing your thoughts and your mind. You have the courage to just sit there and be present with whatever comes up. And you see how thoughts just literally just arise, stay a while and disappear. And our meditation teacher at the time, Venerable Antonio Sada, he said, sadness by itself is just passes. When you marry to it and think, I am sad, or I am sadness, then it becomes very difficult for it to pass. And that was very wise, simple but wise advice. So sadness by itself just passes. Sadness, when you marry to it, it makes it difficult for it to pass. So basically saying when we identify with our sadness, then we it becomes stuck in us. But when you can just create the space in your mind to observe sadness arising, and you observe how it stays a while, and then you observe it just dissolving back into the nature of mind, then you see for yourself that it doesn't have any tangible essence. There's not this heavy substance there. It's just something that comes, stays a while and disappears. And then it's got space for it to pass. And then maybe it pops up again another day for a little while, but it also just passes. And when you give it the space to pass, gradually it just melts away in its own time. So like that, with all of our disturbing emotions as well, if we get to know our minds and get to create some space, we start to see when anger's rearing its head before we get already caught up in it. You know, in the beginning we get caught up and then we start to see it and we can hold back from acting it out. And then slowly, slowly we get to notice that as it's arising up. And when we notice that it's arising up, if we can, this is where Lama Yeshe would say, you check up, you notice it's there, and then to dissolve it with wisdom. One, just by observing it with your awareness, watching the anger when it's there, that already starts to take the sting out of it. You've not identified with it. Oh, I'm angry. You're just observing the anger arising in your mind. So there's already, you've already stopped it overpowering you. You've created a bit of space there to hold the space for anger to come and pass without you having to act it out. Yeah, so that already, just identifying it and having the space in the mind to identify that we're getting angry can already help us to not get caught up in it and act it out. And then you can take the dissolving the anger or whichever problem with wisdom even further to start investigating the nature of that anger or the object that we're angry at. So if we, like we said before, that if what we get angry at, 90% of how we see that person or situation has been created by anger itself, that's not in line with reality, is it? If 90% of what anger sees is its own projection, it means like the rose-tinted glasses painting a beautiful picture when we get attached. Likewise, when we get angry, you know, the eyes, when we see through the lens of anger, it just paints a totally bad picture, totally negative picture of the person we're angry at, or the things or the situation that we get angry towards, right? You can all probably think of your own situations where that's come up. You know, when later on, when we recognize we got angry, we can see the bigger picture. But in the moment that we're angry, all we can see is someone who's harmed us, or someone who's pushed our buttons, someone who's done us wrong, or a situation that's been bad that we couldn't tolerate, right? So we can't see anything good about it in the moment that we're angry. If we can step out of that, we can look from different angles and see clearer. But in the moment when anger is in our driving seat, that's all we can see. Anger just paints a totally negative picture, right? Does that make sense to you? Does anyone have any doubt about that? Yeah. So the person ourselves, when we step back, we can see, when we're not overpowered by anger in that minute, we can see differently. We can remember something lovely about the person, or something not too bad about the situation to deal with it. But in the moment we're angry, it just is totally unbearable, totally negative, just aversion, get me out of that situation, get away from that problem, right? So the mind of anger just paints a totally negative picture. And what we said that the scientists have also verified is that what anger sees is 90% its own projection. If we can recognize that, then we can recognize that, well, that's clearly not in line with reality. If 90% has been created by anger itself, that's totally not in line with reality, right? Anger is a distorted mind, unbalanced mind. It projects totally negative. So that's not in line with reality. So the first question, the first step to do is just recognizing that what anger sees is not in line with reality. So then you start to use your wisdom to try and look at things about the person or situation that are in line with reality, and that will naturally help to reduce the anger, or to dissipate the anger, and to help ourselves not be controlled by our anger. So again, like we looked at with the things we get attached to, same with the things we have aversion to. If we can remember the temporary nature of a difficult situation or a difficult person, that can take the sting out of that difficult situation or that difficult interaction, recognizing that it won't pass, right? That's one level, one thing we can draw on. But we can go way more than that. So where to go with it? When we get really caught up in anger or jealousy or pride or something like that, do we have any control in that moment, or are we under the control of our jealousy or our pride or our anger in that moment? What do you think? Normally, are we in control of our minds when we get angry, or are we under the control of our anger in that moment? Yeah, we're all identifying we're under the control of our anger, aren't we? So, but are we our anger? Are we our jealousy? Are we our pride? Are we our strong attachment? As people, we tend to really identify with our personalities, don't we? We like to think of ourselves as good people for a start. Of course, if we identified with any one of our emotions or ways of thinking, we'd probably like to think of ourselves as being kind people and good people. Mostly we are, but if we were our personalities, we'd always have to be kind, always have to be good. But we can see sometimes we're not so kind. Sometimes we do act out of pride or jealousy or anger or something, right? Sometimes we cause harm to people. So likewise, we are not our personalities on the good side, but also we're not our personalities on the bad side. Right? We are not our anger. We are not our pride. We're not our jealousy. We're not our attachment. They're just states of mind that we're overpowered by, from time to time, maybe quite often, like me. We're overpowered by our emotions, strong emotions when they come up, aren't we? But we're not them. If we were them, we'd always have to be them. But we can see our states of mind changing quite often, right? Between here and getting down to McLeod Ganj, there could be something that really makes us feel so open-hearted and kind towards, or someone that might push our buttons, or a situation that, we suddenly get really agitated or angry by. Just in a short moment, on a short walk down to the town, that could happen, couldn't it? Even to the canteen, a monkey could come by and either go, oh, isn't he cute, let's take a picture, or he could come by and think, ah, let's get away from the monkey. If you're carrying any fruit or a biscuit around, yeah, you might run after. I had one snatch an umbrella off me before when I was here, because it was in a bag that had fruit in it before, and he must have smelt it and ran off with it. So, so what I'm saying is that we can have a reaction in a short moment. We could be completely at ease and fine, and then suddenly something happen, and we can have a reaction either way. Yeah, in the situation, right? So if we, so we can see our personality or our thoughts, our moods, and that are changing so often, right? So we are not our personalities, right? It's clear. If we were, then if we identify as being a kind person, we'd always have to be kind. But we can, if we're honest with ourselves, we'll see there are times we're not. Sometimes we're the opposite of kind, but sometimes we're like neutral. We're not feeling either kind or unkind, right? We can all recognize that in ourselves. So we are not our personality. And surprise, surprise, neither are the people that we get attached to or angry towards as well. So the person who's harming us or annoys us or causes problems for us, who we identify as someone, you know, the one who's making us angry, and we think, yeah, we identify them as being the problem, the troublemaker. They are not that. They're in that moment, they're behaving in a certain way, overpowered like we are, overpowered by their anger or their, I don't know, their greed, wanting something, and so they'll do it even at the expense of harming someone else. So they're also like us, sometimes overpowered by their destructive emotions that make them act out in that way that's harming us now. Just like we identified ourselves, sometimes we get overpowered by our emotions, right? It's the same for each other, it's the same for them as well. So while we can't control the way others behave around us, we don't want to be a doormat for people to walk all over and bring problems to. If we can meet those situations with a more spacious mind and a more reasonable mind, then we can keep our cool, we can keep our peace of mind. And not only that, we can feel, we can keep a happy state of mind, come what may. It can go to the next level. We haven't gotten there yet in our little chat, but it can even go that level. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche, behind all the cups, so here's the image of Lama Zopa Rinpoche there. He gives advice that, yeah, that if that we should be, it would be good for us to draw on any like quotations or reasoning that we can, that will help us to like reframe or transform a way that we see things. So, you know, even if someone does something that's harmful, normally our response would be to get angry at that, or to find it unbearable and to want to push it away with aversion, right? Or even to cause harm in return. We recognize that that doesn't bring us any peace of mind. It actually agitates or disturbs our peace of mind. So it's not good for us, right? We don't want that. We want to keep a peace of mind. We want to keep a happy state of mind. And our own getting angry in a situation, or our own getting, you know, this attached state of mind as well, this way we don't feel enough. We don't feel that we've got enough. We need the other person or the other thing to make us feel good, or to bring us, yeah, to make us feel satisfied or happy. Then there's this state of unease, dis-ease, where we're pinning our hopes, or, you know, we have our hopes and fears at the way people behave towards us or the situation. So in the situation where someone is causing a problem for us, we don't want to just, and normally we won't just want to lay down and take it, but if we recognize if we're responding with our anger, that doesn't do us any good. It disturbs our peace of mind. We get overpowered by it and we can't think clearly, and then we behave in ways, we act it out, in ways which we later regret, and it can also cause problems in our relationships. Sometimes we say really hurtful things or do things that can really cause problem in our relationships, right? So we recognize that the anger is not a really helpful response to a problem or someone who's harming us. So what to do? Do we just lay back and take it? Well, it doesn't mean that either, but we can bring a little bit of space in the mind to cool our anger down. And then if we can reason the situation, we can face the situation without getting angry at the person or the situation, but we can use, if we can keep our minds clear, then we can think more constructively. Well, what would be a suitable solution, a more constructive, helpful solution to solve the problem. So not getting angry to a difficult situation doesn't mean taking it on the chin, and it doesn't mean not acting in the situation. So I usually talk about it like, normally we're reactive to situations or to people's, the way they are with us. We react emotionally. First, we want to create some space, and then on top of that, with training in reasoning and opening our heart more and meeting the situation with more understanding, we can become proactive. So normally we're reactive. If we can create a bit of space, and then on top of that, draw on reasoning and trying to develop understanding and keep our hearts open, then we can start to become proactive in situations. So at the moment, we recognize we get overpowered by our anger and our other emotions. So we want to first create some space in the mind. And then on top of that, if we're able to meet difficult situations or situations that we normally get jealous in or normally get strong desire in or something, if we can meet them, with understanding about the more totality of the situation and totality of the person, and if we can also draw on reasoning and things that help us to keep our heart open in the situation, to meet any situation with love and compassion, then we can become proactive in the situation. And the more we train in having more spaciousness of mind and having more understanding and keeping our heart open in any situation, the more and more that become our second nature. At the moment, we're overpowered by our emotions. If we train in these things, then we start to become more and more familiar with them, and they start to become our natural response to the interactions we have and the life experiences that we have. So we become then proactive. We meet situations what would normally push our buttons. We meet them with more love, with more understanding, with more wisdom, and with more spaciousness that can see the totality of a situation. And so when we meet with situations like that, wouldn't that be more, we feel better for us, wouldn't it? We'll have more peace of mind, we'll be more, if we can come meet a situation with understanding and love, then we're all gonna feel better in that moment. Our relationship is going to be better. The way we communicate is going to be more open. And also the line of action that we take in any situation is going to be, we're going to have more clarity about what to do. It's going to be have more of a chance of turning out well, to bringing about a better resolution in the situation, isn't it? Be more constructive. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche encourages that we draw from different quotes or reasoning, some reasoning or some quotes that we can remind ourselves of again and again and again. Like there's so many out there. There's a beautiful book here full of so many verses. There's a chapter so this is Shantideva's it's either called The Guide to a Bodhisattva's Life or The Way of the Bodhisattva. It's just one text I thought to just touch on a bit today. With only 5 minutes left. Where did that go? Anyway, there's a chapter on patience. Let's see how many verses are in the patience chapter. It's more than 100 and so. 134 verses, like poetic verses that give really good advice to how to transform our anger to be so that we have a more patient mind. And so if there's any one verse in there that makes sense to you and that is appealing to you, that could be the one that you work with for some time. So this is what I was saying, like when when Lama Rinpoche is encouraging us to draw on quotations and reasoning, these verses, which are like quotes and also are full of reasoning, if there's one that's appealing for you, that seems to make sense, that could help you, then it would be the one to like write down and have on your desk or stick on your wall, or to memorize, that you can draw on again and again. It's not like you have to memorize 134 verses, and it doesn't even have to be from this text as an example. We've all heard of inspiring things that made sense to us, like, oh yeah, if I thought about it this way, it would help. So use them, because we have our normal reactionary ways of thinking. You know, when we get angry, we go on a train of thought for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, all night long, all week long. You know, the things, all the reasoning of why we're right to be angry, what that person did that really annoyed us. We think about all these reasons again and again and again, but if we check, we'll find that actually they're distorted reasoning. So if we can familiarize with more rational reasoning that's actually in line with reality, if we can, even if it's just one verse, if we can think of it on a day-to-day basis, then we're going to be able to draw on that when we meet a situation which pushes our buttons and we normally get angry, right? And then the more we familiarize with that verse or that quote or that reasoning, it might be something you've from your own life experience or something you've thought up yourself. You might be creative and written a line in a song or a little poetic verse yourself that is helpful advice for you, that you can think of again and again, that if you intentionally bring that to mind or read it day to day, you will find that when you, in the moment, in the heat of getting angry, you've got more of a chance of catching it and drawing on that helpful advice and changing, you know, reframing your situation. I just want to bring one verse from here quickly before we end today. So there's an analogy given of if you get hit with a, if someone hits you with a stick, we don't get angry at the stick. We get angry at the person who used the stick, right? We don't get angry at the stick because the stick didn't have any power, right? We get angry at the person who wielded the stick, right? This is what the verse draws on. And so Master Shantideva suggests that likewise, we shouldn't get angry at the person who holds the stick, because they don't have control either. They're under the control of their anger or their own other destructive emotion. So that verse is saying to separate the person from the action or the behavior. And that also can really help create some space in our mind to help so that we don't get angry. Normally, yeah, if someone hits us with a stick, we don't get angry at the stick because they didn't mean to hit us. It was the person who meant to hit us, right? So Shantideva is saying also the person themselves, remembering they're not their personality, they're not their emotions, they are also overpowered by either their anger or their greed or whatever they did that made them hit us with the stick. Just like we ourselves recognize we do, sometimes we say and act out and do things based on when we get overpowered by our emotions, right? So there's this wisdom of recognizing the difference between a person and their behavior, basically. Don't conflate the two. If we recognize that the person, in the time that they do something that's not good, not helpful to us, or not helpful in the world, we can, instead of getting angry at them, we recognize that they too are overpowered by their affliction, whatever one it is. And that creates a bit of space so that we don't get angry at the person, but rather we can recognize that they're also overpowered by their emotion, their affliction. So there's space to have compassion for them, because they're also recognizing they're also going to reap the response and the repercussions of their behavior that they acted out, motivated by their own anger or whatever affliction it was. So the verse is number 41 in the patience chapter. It literally just says, if I become angry with the wielder, although I'm actually harmed by the stick, then since the perpetrator too is secondary, being in turn incited by hatred, then I should be angry with the hatred instead. So it's just like that. Yeah, just recognizing the person's overpowered by their anger. Don't get angry at the person, get angry at their anger, basically. So can you see, like, we recognize in ourselves that we get overpowered by our emotions, and so same with other people, and they, just like we do, act them out. So it's like cutting them some slack. It's like and it doesn't mean letting them off the hook. If you need to say, "Oi, stop that. That's not appropriate behavior." You know, if we communicate that through anger, and then what we try and do to resolve the situation is driven by anger, it's not so likely it's going to turn out so well. But if we can recognize that behavior is not appropriate, but not get angry at the person for behaving that way, there's room to keep our cool, to keep a space of mind, to not get agitated in our mind, and there's room to meet that person with understanding and keeping an open heart to them, to then have a more skillful approach at what might be more suitable to help steer them away from engaging in that behavior. And at the very least, we haven't upset our own peace of mind. And then on top of that, in the way we've communicated, we haven't added any more harm to the problem. And then at best, through that behavior and communicating in that way, we can also bring about potentially a better resolution for the problem. So we can see on all levels it's in our interest not to carry on being overpowered by emotions, right? I'm not sure if this session is for an hour and a half. Does anyone know? Hour and a half, great. So Venerable Kunpenla mentioned about the debating. I wasn't going to talk so much formally about debating, but I might as well bring a bit of that in now, and we can also have some question and answer in a bit. Because I did also want to talk about that. So you can see this checking up, dissolving our problems with wisdom through just creating some space in our mind, and then starting to see more of a totality of the situation, recognizing that the person is not their behavior, and giving them some, creating some space there to see that they're overpowered by their afflictions as well. We can see how that would naturally bring more, that's in line with reality. So that's going to give us some more space of mind. We've met the situation with more understanding. So then that gives some space for us to also bring love to the situation, compassion to the situation. Love is the wish to benefit others, and compassion is the wish that they be free of suffering. It can also apply to ourselves as well, any living being, any sentient being, wanting them to be happy and free of problems. So recognizing that someone acting out of their destructive emotion of anger, for example, then they're engaging in behavior that's creating more problems, creating frictions in their relationships. It's going to have repercussions for them later on, negative consequences. So there's a room for compassion for them there, isn't there? Just like me, they got overpowered by their afflictions. And things would turn out better for them if they weren't overpowered by it. So may they be free of the causes of the problem and suffering that they encounter, which is their own affliction. When we wish for others to be free of suffering, it's not just wishing their problem go away, it's wishing that they be free of the cause of their suffering. And just like in our motivation at the start of our time together today, is recognizing that our experience of problem of pain and suffering, or our experience of happiness and pleasure, is internal, isn't it? So while the external things are conditions that can bring those experiences about, the main cause is inside us. So if people are acting out their hostility and their anger and their strong greed and jealousy and pride and so on, then that's an internal attitude that's going to bring its internal consequences later on. And likewise, when we come from a place of love and understanding and compassion and clarity of mind and awareness, then these are all like more wholesome states of mind. Like the environment, our internal environment is good, and that's going to bring about like a ripening of positive, good experiences for us in the future. So our inner happiness and suffering, inner happiness and problems come from their own inner causes. So the people who create problems for other people, they also are going to experience the results of that in the future. So there's a room, may they be free of the cause of suffering, which is their own afflictions, basically. This is where we can have compassion, yeah? Recognizing they're overpowered by their afflictions. It's going to bring them negative consequences. It's bringing negative consequences now. It's going to bring them problems later on. May they be free of their anger. May they be free of their afflictions. May they be free of the underlying ignorance or confusion that brought about this attitude and this behavior. So one more verse from the patience chapter before I speak a little bit more about, I'll speak a bit about debate. So the 10th verse in that chapter is a really it's a famous quote from this text. And it's a bit like what Bob Marley says, don't worry, everything's going to be all right. So it says, why be unhappy about something? Basically, it says, if there's another translation for it. It's like, if there's something you can do about it, why worry? If there's nothing you can do about it, what's the use in worrying? Right? If there's something you can do about it, why worry? If there's nothing you can do about it, what's the use in worrying? This verse, we can all nod our heads because it makes sense. But if we can really let it in our heart, if we can really start to see things from that way, can you imagine how it's going to impact our lives? If we could really just accept things that we can't change and not get worried and flustered about things we can change, we just do something about it and be at peace with ourselves, knowing that we've done what we can. You know, if we can really internalize, because we all intellectually understand it, just this verse alone, I can't imagine how much it would really improve our lives if we really internalized it. Actually, my teacher Geshe Jamyang in Australia at Chenrezig, when he taught this verse, he also drew on the serenity prayer in the Christian tradition. The Lord grant me the serenity. Lord grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and does anyone know off by heart, and the things, and to change the things I can, and to have the wisdom to know the difference. My teacher actually felt that this was more powerful. He actually said this verse was more powerful, the serenity prayer, in having an impact on our mind. Basically, to be able to accept the things we can change with serenity or with humility, with peace of mind, and then to make changes of the things that we can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. Basically, he felt that was very more potent, but it's getting exactly the same meaning here. If there's something you can do about it, why worry? If there's nothing you can do about it, what's the use in worrying? You know, but sometimes it can feel like not a bitter pill to swallow, but like a thing like you just have to swallow it and accept it. But if we genuinely come from that place of yeah, there's something I can do, crack on, or there's nothing I can do, don't torment myself anymore, just let it go, then can you imagine what an impact that's going to have? Yeah. And like I said at the start, I'm sharing these things that these wise beings that have created these texts, and the teachers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who've internalized these and really they come from that place, they embody it totally. I don't. I'm a complete learner, complete in training, but these verses, these teachings really inspire me. And when I try and draw on them, they really do help. But even this morning, my neighbor lent me their key because I didn't have any power or gas, and they lent me their house key so I could make myself some breakfast. And I forgot to leave the key for them, and I came up here and they called. They're trying to get home to make lunch and they can't get in because I've locked their key in my house. So then there's nothing I can do about it. They can go and get the other key from their husband. But then it kept coming back in my mind, and I was worrying about her because she's got other work to go and do today. So it wasn't really helpful to have that. I couldn't do anything about it, but I also couldn't let it go. So I'm just being really honest with you that yeah, I'm a work in progress with these things as well. It's much more potent to hear these things from people who really embody it and live and breathe it. And I'm a total beginner, but I can see the benefit in these things. And when I am able to draw on them at any time, I can see it really does help. And it can at least start to cut through a long-term, you know, like you can make the time we're worrying over something a lot shorter if you can remember these things along the way. And yeah. So hopefully some of that made sense to you and you could identify with some of these things and see how, if we're able to understand, basically we say reasoning, if you just try and meet someone or a situation with more understanding, that already give us a bit of space to not react, doesn't it? And not only not react, it gives us space if we meet it with genuine understanding, and if we can on top with like love and compassion, but even just with the understanding, it naturally you can meet with a bit of with the understanding where you can warm to them, you can try and find a way to resolve it without creating more problems in it. Yeah. Sometimes the love and the compassion is a step too far in the beginning, but at least if we can meet with understanding. But if it's genuine understanding, you feel that normally some compassion will come. Like if you give a silly example, like if you're driving and someone like really drives erratically and pulls out in front of you and or overtakes you, like just does something where there's broken one of the rules to try like jump the red light or something, especially if they pulled out in front of us or cut us off or something, we would have a response to that where we'd feel agitated or annoyed by them, wouldn't we? But if we were to hear that they were rushing to the emergency ward at the hospital because either they're about to have a baby or there was an emergency situation, an injury or something, just by hearing that, then we understood the situation. Immediately our irritation melts away, right? Immediately we don't feel annoyed at them. It's like, go ahead, get there as quick as you can. That would be the response if we understood the situation, right? So not only there would be the understanding that we wouldn't get once we understood there was an emergency they had to tend to, that immediately would cut through our feeling angry or irritated. But also, can you see how it would naturally, you'd want the best for them? It's like, yeah, get there as quick as you can. I hope it all works out. That would be also a natural response that would come from understanding the situation properly, wouldn't it? So that's like a silly example, like an obvious one where you can see that having just the understanding would melt the anger in the first place, and on top of that would bring naturally you'd want it to go all right for them, you'd want the best for them. So love and compassion immediately kind of knock on from the understanding. That makes sense. So that's with respect to dealing with our problems and our emotions. There's so much we could say about that. You know, to be honest, there's no situation that we can't meet with love and compassion, with more understanding and more training. Yeah. There's so much more to say, actually. Even like Shandideva explains, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, they all encourage us to see someone who brings problems to us actually as being like our kindest teacher. And it would be quite hard for us to have that genuine feeling that they are our kindest teacher. But we can come to see them like that, because we can recognize that having a more patient mind, meeting difficult situations with more tolerance, more patience, is actually like to have a more resilient mind. It's actually really good for us, isn't it? If we can be more resilient, more tolerant, and more patient in the face of harm or the face of difficulties, we can keep our cool, we can keep our peace of mind, we can keep our clarity of mind. It goes way beyond that. It's actually patience is a really good quality to develop. Like if we're on a spiritual path, if we want to become enlightened, it's a necessity to develop this practice of the perfection of patience. So we really want to cultivate patience at any opportunity. But even without thinking about that, you know, in English, there's always this saying like patience has its own reward and patience is the best virtue. You know, why is that? Because it's opposite impatience and anger is so destructive. So if we can bring to this world and bring to our own inner environment more patient, resilient, tolerant mind, that is a great asset to ourselves and to the world, right? If we meet others as well, not only our own mind is not disturbed, but the way we interact with others, the relationships will be better if we're more tolerant, understanding, and patient, right? So who gives us the opportunity to train our patience? Well, it ain't our best friends, is it? It's not the people who make us feel lovely. It's the ones who we have to be patient towards a difficult situation. So training our resilience, our tolerance, our patience is done in the face of difficult people and difficult situations, right? So actually it's quite rare, our friends in the moment that then, our friends don't give us so much opportunity to practice patience because we love hanging around with them and they love everything they say and it all goes well. It's the people who cause us, bring the problems to us, where we have to train, we have to draw on our capacity. We have to develop our capacity to be resilient. So they're giving us the opportunity to do the training. And in that way, they become our best friend, like a really kind person, our best teacher, because there's the opportunity to not respond with harm, not respond with intolerance or anger, but to start to, bring resilience to the situation, patience, tolerance, understanding to the situation. So we're cultivating a more patient, resilient, tolerant mind every time we meet someone who brings us difficulty or problems. Every time that we're able to try to be patient, we're strengthening our ability to be patient and tolerant. So they give us the opportunity to grow this really positive quality of patience. No one else does. So in that way, they become our kindest teacher. So that's why here, Tolanus and Shantideva and Lama Rinpoche, they all openly say, the Hamdu actually is your best or kindest teacher. So, and the reason is what we just said. So when you can see the reasoning behind it, then we can be a little bit more open to try to be more, to bring a more resilient, patient, tolerant state of mind to a response to a difficult situation. Because we know that we see with the athletes and the Olympians with their physical training, how they can go way beyond our ordinary capacity and they get like superhuman capacity with their stamina and their flexibility and everything. So on an internal level as well, we can develop this stamina and this flexibility of mind to keep open and open-hearted and to keep clearer and wiser and keep cool and spacious based on training in these difficult situations. And then if we can see it like that, then every opportunity becomes like an opportunity to be creative and to be curious. And how can I engage in that situation? Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Well, that's why that serenity prayer was like to have the wisdom to know the difference between what you can and can't do. And that comes with honesty for a start. So the question is like that verse of if you can do something about it, why worry? If there's nothing you can do, what's the use of worrying? How do you know when you can do something? Because sometimes we think we can, but actually we can't. And sometimes we can't, but we think we can. And then we've actually put too many expectation on the other person that are unrealistic. So there's no like black and white answer with that. I feel like it is just a case of we do the best with what we've got. Sometimes we can overthink, what can I do, as well. It's like we have to be realistic with our limitations and be honest with our capacity and recognize our expectations on others and try and let go of them. So I really feel like we shouldn't hold back until we know 100% for sure. Otherwise, we could be doing things to improve the situation, but we're holding back because we're not sure what's the best thing to do. We just, at the end of the day, we just have to check our motivation. Thank you. At the end of the day, we have to check our motivation is on the right track. And then we just do our best and let go of the outcome. Because sometimes we do things and we make a situation worse, we put our foot in it, but we mean well, don't we? So what do we do now? Well, it's not that we don't act on anything because we don't know, we can't be sure how it's going to work out. We just make sure that we've got a genuine motivation to try and help the situation, to try and improve the situation. And then we just do our best. And we've been honest with ourselves. You know, I might not be able to work this out, but from my side, I'm coming from a good place. I'll do my best. I'll try and make sure we're coming from a good motivation and just be, that's why we need that spaciousness to make sure we're not all coming out of a place of being worked up about it and trying to force a change in someone else or a situation, but just honestly, like, yeah, there's a problem here, there's a situation here, I genuinely want to try and improve it. From my side, I'll do my best, and like, just think for a bit what you think would be, draw on whatever reasoning and wisdom you can to think what might be the most beneficial outcome, and then just do our best, and then let go of the outcome because we've tried, yeah. But other than that, I don't know. We can ruminate again and again and again, trying to think of every eventuality, but that's also not going to be so constructive, is it? So I think the motivation is the main thing.
We saw how observing attachment and observing anger are the ways to understand them and be able to overcome them. And my question is, how does debate help in that regard? How does debate help us overcome our attachment and our...
So debate, for those of you who probably we've all heard the word debate, in Buddhism, the Nalanda tradition of debating is a tradition of debating as a way of analyzing. It has twofold process. One is a formula, a specific formula way to engage with the Buddha's teachings to analyze their authenticity. And I really wanted to talk about it. Do you want to ask, is it related to the previous? All right. I can take your question now if you like, and then we'll do this after. Yeah. Oh, we'll get to it in a second. Sorry? Who controls the anger? Is it the body, or is it inside is it just the consciousness? So actually anger controls us. Our prior strong habituation with anger controls our anger. And we give it a wide open space to act out. So it's only through our strong familiarity with anger that anger has any power. It's basically an old habit, an ancient old habit, a reactionary habit, and by not trying to tame it, by just reacting with anger again and again, we're reinforcing and strengthening that habit. We all have heard in science like neuroplasticity, yeah? So, and neural pathways. So the mind in Buddhism is not the brain, but the brain is the physical support that helps, that the mind can work on. So either way, whether you look at neuroplasticity and neuro pathways, or when you look from the Buddhist perspective of like, basically, you're training your mind to go down a different groove. You're not following the groove of anger anymore. At the moment, we go down the line of anger all the time. So we just strengthening that neuro pathway. We're strengthening that groove, that habit of anger. So anger controls us. Nothing controls anger. It's running free in our mind. It has its power because of its habitual familiarization with it. That's all. That's all. So we just have to stop acting out. We have to change what we're familiar with. In the beginning, the automatic response is not a patient one because we're so habituated with anger. If we can train, and it's hard in the beginning when you're creating this new groove, the groovy path of patience. But the more and more we meet situations with a patient attitude, then we strengthen that habit, and the habit of anger gets less. And the habit of patience becomes our natural response. Or love. The more we train with love, when we meet difficult people, instead of responding with anger, we can put in effort to respond with love at the beginning, and that habit gets stronger and stronger and more familiar. Then that becomes easy to respond with love. And anger is, we haven't been there for a long while, and that just gets less and less and less. So then love becomes a power. So actually, we have control of our minds, but we allow ourselves to be over-controlled, overpowered, or in the control. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, actually our mind is like putty or clay. We can mold it however we want. This is really profound. So far, we've let an anger and jealousy and pride and ego and attachment, greed mold our clay. But we have a choice. So we can start sculpting this beautiful sculpture of a beautiful, pure heart, an open heart, a good heart, an understanding heart. It's in our hands. And it's just about creating this habit, creating these new habits, we already have the seeds of love and compassion and wisdom in us. We just have to pour water on them, nurture them, habituate with them more and more and more, because they're our true nature. And the other afflictive states of mind, which come from our confusion, they will naturally reduce. They will lose their power over us. So no one has power over anger. Anger, we let it run free rein in our mind, and by that we give it power. So we just have to stop giving it power. And so thank you for your question. And so how does that come in with debate? So another thing of like checking up, so we use the tradition of the method of debating as a way to analyze the Buddha's teachings, and we can do it with any philosophy or any teachings. Like the Buddha said, don't just take my words because I said so, don't just have blind faith, but you should check and analyze. Like if you were buying gold, you would rub it and burn it and cut it to make sure it's authentic, and then you would buy it. You wouldn't just, pay thousands for a fake gold. You want to check it's authentic first. So the Buddha said, likewise, we should check his teachings with this threefold process of hearing, reflecting, and meditating to verify that it's true, and then take it up for yourself. So we use the debate process to analyze Buddha's teachings and to authenticate them. It's not that you're trying to prove a point to your defender and trying to prove them wrong. It's rather that you use this process of analytical reasoning in debating, reasons and logic in debating, in order to reveal the truth, to overcome our doubts and our confusion, to see what holds to reasoning or not. And if it holds to reasoning, we can verify it to be true. If we show some contradiction or some fault in that way of thinking, we can let it go. So the outer process of debating, it's very humbling experience because your wrong concepts are getting thrashed. People are, challenging you and debating at you. And if you're holding a wrong position or you're confused about something, you have doubts, then it all gets exposed and revealed. And so firstly, you start to not take yourself so seriously, otherwise you go nuts. you have to not take yourself so seriously and be more inquisitive about what's the reality, and not be so strongly holden to your point of view. And so it helps you to be more to not identify with your views, but to really, you have to hold the point of view, but hold it lightly and see if it holds to reasoning or not. And at first you can get angry or frustrated when you get things, when you get tsar, and when you get exposed to be completely mistaken about something, it can humble your pride. But later on, you end up just laughing and being happy that you've cleared some misunderstanding, cleared some confusion, or cleared a wrong view that you had before. So you can get closer and closer to the truth. And also it helps you to be able to listen more to other people, to hear different points of view, so that you can then have more understanding. If you can you have to meet in the middle. We can't be having a debate or an argument about something we don't, like, for example, permanent. In the Buddhist presentation, permanent doesn't mean eternally, lasting forever, eternally. It just means for the duration it exists, it doesn't change. whereas our normal understanding of permanent is eternal or lasting forever. So if I'm thinking about permanent in this discussion that we're having or debate about permanence, if I'm holding strongly that it means eternal, but you're explaining to me and debating to me that, but thinking about it being for as long as it exists, it's not changing, we're not meeting in the middle, are we? So I have to know where you're coming from, you have to know where I'm coming from, we have to have this understanding, and then we can have a basis for a discussion and investigation and debating. So it helps bring understanding. So it helps you stop having this strong attachment to your ideas and stuff. So this process of debating is used as a formula for analyzing and investigating the Buddha's teachings or anything you want to understand and learn about. And so that's one purpose of it. And you learn this skill of reasoning and analyzing things, and you learn to think under pressure and things. And then later on, what you really are learning that for is so that you can do this as an internal process, so that you can debate with your own junk in your mind, your own wrong ideas, your own anger. When your anger pipes up in your mind, you can debate at it using logic and reasonings to help pipe it down. You can debate with your attachment. Your attachment convinces you that you really need that new thing, or you really need that person for your happiness. And you can reason, you don't have to change anything out there, but you can reason with your own attachment because you've learned the outer process, the formula of the way of logical thinking. And you can do that with your own afflictions to help to pacify them, not only pacify them, to help transform them. So the process of debating, to me, it's a real art form. It's this real creative process. And it's a really helpful one that you bring to your own inner experience and to your own, you can reason with your own misunderstandings and with your own afflictions to help calm them down and to help transform them, to help let go of your wrong ideas and to help strengthen. Like if you can draw on logic and reasoning about why is it reasonable to be compassionate to this person right now, if you can think like, if you can bring reasoning to your love and your compassion, they become so stable. At the moment, we love our loved ones who do well by us, but if they do something wrong by us, they don't become our loved ones anymore. There might be a time where we fall out with them. But if our love for them is not based on attachment, if it's based on reasoning, of understanding that just like me, they want happiness and not to suffer, if we can familiarize with that reasoning, they want to be happy, they don't want to suffer, so may they be happy. If we use that reasoning again and again as a reason for cultivating our love, then no matter what they do, we can keep our love to them. We might have to create some distance between them physically in time. It might be the wise thing to do, but we can keep our heart open to them. So our logic and reasoning and the process of debating, when we can bring it internal as well, and not so debating with a partner, but debating with our own afflictions, but also using that same logical reasoning for our good qualities of reasons to be loving, reasons to be patient, reasons to be understanding in this moment. We can bring logic and reasoning to our good qualities as well, then they become really, really stable. And then they can really flourish and grow in our hearts. So that it becomes essential, really benefits. Then we have got one question from someone online before, just going a couple of minutes over. If anyone needs to go, please, you can. Just a couple more minutes. So the question from Martina from Zoom, thank you. If negative emotions or other, through direct actions and words, activate within ourselves, if negative emotion of the other, through direct actions and words, activate within ourselves, accepting that we can try to change our personal attitude, but not of the other, is it right to remain in contact with that activated or situated person? Or is it better for ourselves to change direction, how to act in this situation? All right, so thank you. I think that's what we've just touched on now. So basically the gist of it is keeping our hearts open to someone, having love and compassion for them, doesn't necessarily mean, and like we're saying, and being patient to someone and understanding to them doesn't necessarily mean that we have to take whatever they throw at us. We might be wise in some situations to keep our distance. So the trick is what I aim to do is, like, on an outer level, we'd be wise in some situations to keep our distance from some people. We'll be wise, and it's a necessity in some situations to have some people locked up in jail to protect society and to protect themselves from harming other people. So we have to take the action on an outer level sometimes to create distance or to keep people away or locked up to protect themselves and others. But what we're aiming for is that internally to not close our heart to them. And there's a difference. We want to be able to keep our heart open, but still, and I'm not but still, and therefore to be able to have a clearer mind to know what is a more suitable course of action that will be more constructive or beneficial. Yeah. So the key is to never close our hearts. No matter what someone's doing, we can say no, get away, don't do that. You have to have some people have to have certain consequences, like going serving a sentence or something, or paying a fine for their inappropriate behavior. But inside, to have a mind that's undisturbed and also to keep our heart open. So this is what this is all about. When we understand the other people as coming from their own afflictions, they're overpowered by the afflictions, so we don't get angry at them and we can feel compassion to them, but it doesn't mean to say, keep doing what you're doing. No, we have to say, there's a line to be drawn, stop, but you can do it from a place of love and understanding. It's possible, isn't it? And not only it's possible, it'd be more effective. And yeah, anyway, you can consider that for yourself, and hopefully that answered your question, Martina. Thank you. Saying this again and again, and we mentioned it at Root as well. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche, just before he passed away, like within a month or two before he passed away, it's coming up to 3 years now, when he was leaving here to Shida, at the drive, at the entrance, just as he was leaving and about to get in his car, you might remember Ben, he was doing this gesture with his hand. And as he was getting in the car, he was doing this to all of us. Open up your hearts. Open up your hearts. Open up your hearts. And it really touched me. And this is what this is all about. And he was a living embodiment of someone. The name Zopa Rinpoche, Zopa means patience in Tibetan. He lived and breathed this total, ability to be there for everyone, like day and night, 24/7, to take whatever came and to meet it with such joy and such love and wisdom. So he was a real living embodiment of all the things we've been talking about today, and a real inspiration for me. And to have this memory of this love, this gesture is really like that. That's what it's all about. Yeah, and he was a very strong, really, really strong because of his open heart. So love is really, and compassion are really evidently signs of strength when you see people who really embody them, like Lama Zopa and His Holiness. Yeah, I take that as a great inspiration for me, and so I feel really grateful to have had this time to share with you during these days of miracles, to talk about these things. It's a real privilege for me to reflect on and to help my own mind as well, and hopefully in our discussion you found some things that resonated with you or might be beneficial for you. And so we can dedicate any positivity that we've created through this discussion today. We can dedicate it for us all to be able to open our hearts as much as possible for our own peace of mind and for our own well-being, recognizing that's going to ripple out to the way we relate with our loved ones and all the people that we connect with. And we can really dedicate that it is a contribution to peace in this world, because it is like it's drop by drop, person by person. The more and more of us that develop this inner peace and an open heart, the more and more that's going to ripple out, affecting the world. So we dedicate that this is a contribution to world peace and for the betterment of humanity, and in the long term for each and every sentient being, wherever there's a living being with a mind, may they have happy, healthy minds, and may they be free of any pain and suffering due to all the merits that we've created through this discussion today and all of our positive actions. And we also can really dedicate sincerely for the swift, unmistaken reincarnation of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who was such a perfect role model and embodiment of all the good things that we want to develop, so that he can continue on with his activities to benefit so many beings in this world. So we dedicate like that, and for the long and stable life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. There's a long life ceremony for His Holiness tomorrow at the temple. For those of you who are in town and would like to go. Thank you all so much for this, and thank you very much, Kumbhala, for this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you, everyone online.
so much, my
you.
dear.
Thank you, Drolma. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you so much online. Please remember today, thank you so much, Venerable Drolma, of course.
You said thank you. Thank
And
you.
please remember today we have a second teacher at 9 o'clock in India, IST. We have Venerable Tupin Shodrin, who is in US. So 9 o'clock online, not yet Toshita at 9 o'clock, online, only online. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, good evening. Thank you so much. Thank